Hello students, welcome to the second part of the series on the art of problem solving with special focus on GRE. In this module, I'll be dealing with techniques to attack quantitative comparison questions. Now QC questions, as you know, are actually MCQs where there are four options. Quantity A is greater, quantity B is greater, both the quantities are equal and the relationship cannot be determined. All these four options are fixed for any type of QC questions. Normally, a QC question should not take more than a minute to solve. This means that the QC questions are framed in such a way that you just have to apply smart techniques to solve them. You don't necessarily have to do any tedious long calculations. So let's look at some typical GRE questions, sample QC questions in this webinar. Now, look at this question where you need to compare area of circle with radius 6 and 108. Again, concept clarity is a must, and wherever there is a need, you have to use the formula also. But as I told you, no rigorous calculations. Area of circle with radius 6. You know, area of circle is given by pi r square, which is 3.14 times 6 times 6. Now, I am not going to sit and calculate it. I am going to approximate to the nearest integer. 3.14 is 3 times 6 times 6. That should be easy to calculate, right? 6 times 6 is 36. 36 times 3 is 108. So obviously what have I done here? I approximated it to the nearest whole number here. So you know that this actual value is actually greater than 3 into 6 into 6, which is equal to 108. So pi r square is greater than 108. The answer would be quantity A is greater. Very simple technique I've adopted here. Instead of multiplying a decimal, which is always complicated, I round it off to the nearest whole number. 3.14, when you round it off, you know the value after the decimal point is less than 5. So you round it down, in the sense you trim the decimal positions. The answer would be 3 times 6 times 6, which is 108. Obviously this value, since 3.14 is greater than 3, the answer would be pi r square is greater than 108. Quantity A is greater. Compare the quantities term by term. I have a sum of 3 terms, Normally, I advise the students not to use the on-screen calculator immediately. Rather, think of some way to approximate it, or think of some way to analyze this two quantities. Some other way, because that using the on-screen calculator takes a lot of time. As I told you, QC questions should not be solved, should not take more than 1 minute for you to solve. Now, I am going to compare 93.1. Find a number closest to 93.1 in this set. Obviously, these are the two numbers which are closer to each other. So, I would just say 93.1 is greater than 77.6. Right? Now, again, look at the second term, 761.87. Find the closer number on the quantity B. Obviously, 761.87 is closer to 753.44. So 761.87, fortunately for us, it's greater than 753.44. Expect such simple questions also in GRE, but find a way to compare them. It will take hardly a few seconds, 1 or 2 seconds maximum to answer this question. So 203, as I told you, you compare it with the nearest number for 203, which is 199.7814. So obviously 203.18 is greater than 199.7814. Without doing any addition, I just can say that this sum is obviously greater than this sum, which means quantity A is greater. So I have not used any calculation here. As I told you, even while speaking, right, I'm explaining this sum, and it's taken me hardly 1 or 2 seconds for me to solve this question. So imagine that you are not going to explain to anybody. So within a second, you can solve this answer, right? You can find out the answer for this question. So though it looks very easy, sometimes students get confused. The reason being that they sit and do the calculation here. So please do not go for any tedious calculations. Repeat, on-screen calculator or use of calculator is absolutely not required in QC questions. Again, approximation of percentages, something like this. 49% of 23, 22% of 57. Now, 49% of 23 and 22% of 57. See how I am going to calculate. As I have been telling students, Percentages, normally you can do it faster, the calculation part of it faster, provided you know to split that into proper percentage in terms of standard percentages as 1% of a number, 10% of a number, 100% of number, and so on. I'll be doing a separate series on percentages, separate webinar on percentages. For now, see how I'm attempting this question. 49% of 23, the normal procedure will be 49 by 100 times 23. You are trying to compare it with 22 by 100 times 57, right? So, ideally when you're going to compare these two quantities of fraction, I can always cancel off this one, this is not required. So, ideally, because the equal terms you can ignore when you are going to compare, right? You're just going to compare the unequal terms, 22 times 57. Now, if you look at this, the number closer to 23 is 22. Between these two, right, there is a 1 unit difference. That is, this is plus 1 unit here. But between these two, this is a plus how many units more than this? This is a plus 8 units. So obviously this means that this quantity is greater than 49 times 23. This is, which means that 22% of 57 is greater than 49% of 23. If you want, you can do the calculations and check for yourself. 49 times 23, when you plug it in the calculator, you will get the answer as 1127. This side, 22 times 57, I think it's 1254. So 1127 is less than 1254. So very simple calculations I have done here. Can you see that I have not multiplied it tediously? I have not done 49 times 23. Neither I have used the shortcut technique for percentages. I have solved it very simply, finding out the increase and decrease in the numbers between the quantities, right? Find the closer number to 23 is 22. So 23 is increased by 1 unit. 49 and 57. 57 is increased by 8 units, which means there is a net increase of 7 units this side, right? But there is a decrease of 1 unit, so there is a net increase of 6 units maybe. This side, there's a net, I mean, crudely speaking, I'm not saying that it is exactly increased by 6 units. I'm just saying that there's, when you look at it, you feel that there is some kind of increase here. That logic always works in quantitative comparison questions. Another very interesting question that students encountered in GRE in the recent past. Quantity A, product of slopes of the lines forming two adjacent sides of a rectangle in a coordinate plane whose sides are not parallel to any coordinate axis. So I asked those students who attempted GRE, how did they go about solving this question? And let me tell you, it is solved within a second. Within a second, you can arrive at the answer here. Now, those who know, please, yes, you know the method to solve it. Those who do not know, listen to this. Product of slopes of lines forming two adjacent sides of a rectangle in a coordinate plane whose sides are not parallel to any coordinate axis. A normal instinct to draw a rectangle like this, but then it clearly says that the rectangle sides are not parallel to the coordinate axis, which means the rectangle is going to be tilted, right? Somewhere like this. Anyhow you want, you can tilt the rectangle. You could tilt the rectangle like this, covering this. So it is tilted. That's what it means. That's all it means. So tilted means, now the question is asking about the product of the slopes of the lines forming two adjacent sides of the rectangle. So what is the product of the slope of this line and this line forming two adjacent sides of the rectangle? Now when I draw this, it becomes easier for you to identify what I am talking about. You know that the rectangles, the vertical angles are 90 degrees, and you know that the product of slope of two perpendicular lines is always -1. So this quantity is always -1, no matter what your side of rectangle here is. You don't have to worry why the vertices of rectangles are not given to you, or the line segments forming the rectangles are not given to you. Blindly you can say that the product of slopes of these two adjacent side lines is always equal to -1. So this quantity A is less than quantity B. So which means you don't have to even visualize what it is. You know it's a rectangle. Rectangle, the two lines which form the two adjacent sides of a rectangle are always perpendicular to each other. Perpendicular lines, the product of slopes will be -1. Now, application of Zonaf. This is one very important mnemonic that we advise and galvanize. Zonaf, what does Zonaf stands for? Zonaf is another structured way of plugging in values. For example, when you have no information about that, what that variable stands for, what is the value for the variable, you plug in this mnemonic called as Zonaf. Zonaf means structured way of plugging in the numbers. Normally the instinct would be, let me look at this question. x is greater than 0, quantity A is x square, quantity B is x cube. X is a positive number, right? I don't say it's an integer, I just say it's a number, some kind of number. Nowhere it's given, it's an integer. X is greater than 0. Immediate instinct is to say that x cube is greater than x square. That's a very, very normal, even after practicing so many tests, even after attempting so many mock tests on a platform, students still are not able to internalize this concept of zone F. This is a very, very, very important concept. You have to learn to internalize this, apply it wherever possible, mostly in QC questions where there is no information about the variable that's given there. So x square and x cube. Immediate instinct, as I told you, to write x cube is greater than x square. Yes, it is true, but provided x is an integer. Only for integers, positive integers, say x is equal to 1, x cube is equal to 1, both are equal. But then when x is equal to 2, 4, and x cube is equal to 8, the x is equal to 2, it becomes 8. So this is 4 and this is 8. So 4 is less than 8. That's what you get, right? Now, when it is an integer greater than 1, you know that x cube is greater than x square. But then it doesn't talk about integers always. So how then do you go about such problems? That is when you have to apply this zone F. Zone F, Z stands for 0. Then O stands for ones, both positive and negative ones. That is, take x is equal to 1. N stands for negative numbers. Any negative number you can plug in. E stands for extremes. Suppose you are going to check with, say, 2 and 3 numbers, 2 and 3 for x. Also check with hundreds and 200s for x. That makes sense because sometimes it works out for small numbers, something doesn't work out for large numbers. Then F stands for fractions. Say 1 by 2, 1 by 3, it could be a proper fraction or an improper fraction. In this case, as I told you, when x is equal to 1, so let me write it down here, F stands for fractions. So when x is equal to 1, obviously both the quantities are equal. When x is an integer greater than 1, that is, for example, x is equal to 2, then x cube is greater than x square, that is, quantity B is greater. Now in this itself, you can say that you do not have any conclusive evidence about which quantity is greater. So you go for option D. Also, suppose you have this question, say quantity A is x, quantity B is 1 by x. Again, do not go by instinct that x is greater than 1 by x, which is wrong. When you have a fraction, a proper fraction, say 1 by 2, in that case, quantity A will be less than quantity B. Even in that case, the answer would be option D, that is, the relationship cannot be determined. So please be very careful when you plug in numbers. Make sure that you go by this structured way of plugging numbers so that you don't miss out on any value, right? Now comparing quadratics. Sorry, not a quadratic. This is not a quadratic. This is a polynomial. Comparing some polynomials. Okay. Now I have a higher degree polynomial. F of x is equal to x power 5 minus 11x plus 10. G of x is equal to x power 5 minus 12x plus 11. F of 17 and G of 17. Very intriguing, right? So immediately you should think, oh my god, I need to calculate 17 power 5 minus 11 times 17 plus 10, and G of 17 is equal to 17 power 5 minus 12 times 17 plus 11. Let me tell you, GRE ETS is very student friendly. They don't want you to sit and calculate the 17 power 5. Nobody wants that, right? So now when you're going to compare it, let me put a box so that you identify what I'm trying to do here. 17 plus 10, I'm going to compare it with 17 power 5 minus 12 times 17 plus 11. So what happens here? I have the same quantity on both sides, which means I don't have to compare 17 power 5. They're equal. So I'm left with minus 11 times 17 plus 10. I just have to compare it with minus 12 times 17 plus 11. Now when you're going to compare, you can always rearrange the terms and compare. Still you will get the same answer. Now I'm not going to multiply 17 times 11. 17 times 11 is very simple. I'll just tell the answer is 187. But 17 times 12, you need to do the calculation. Here, this is minus 11 times 17. I'm not writing the answer here. I'm just grouping it. See some smarter ways of solving these problems. I know most of you are very good in math, but think of smarter ways so that you save on time. So 11 plus 10 goes to the other side, becomes minus 10. I do not know, still do not know if there is an equal to sign or an inequality here. Now what is this? This is just 17. Can you see that? Take your 17 outside common. You are left with 12 minus 11 inside, which is 1. So this side is just 17 and the right side is just 1. So this is greater. So go back, retrace the step. This will be greater. This is what you get, which means f of 17 is greater than g of 17. I have not done any multiplication. At the most, I have done some kind of addition here. That's also a very simple addition. If you do it this way, definitely 2 seconds, 3 seconds, you get the answer for quantitative comparison questions. Repeat, questions are designed like this in the GRE. ABCD is a parallelogram. Now, concept clarity is a very important rule of thumb to solve quantitative comparison questions. Otherwise, there is no way you can act smartly in terms of QC questions, in solving QC questions. ABCD is a parallelogram. ABCD is a parallelogram. One side is given to be 6, the other side is given to be 4. Right? Now, the question is compare area of parallelogram ABCD with quantity B, which is 24. The immediate instinct for students is to, area of parallelogram is base times height. Oh my God, I don't have a height here. So let me draw a height here. Okay. So this is the way that students normally do. I'll tell you how it's not going to help in GRE. Now they will write this as x. Screw themselves out. And then apply Pythagoras theorem and write it as 36 minus x square. Now they will get the height as 36 root of 36 minus x square times basis 4 plus x. Oh my God, I'm left with the x here. What am I going to do with that? How am I going to compare it with 24? Yes. Now, here comes the very basic rule that you need to apply in right angle triangles. So, instead of x and all that, I'm going to remove all this. This is not what I'm going to do. Right? I'm not going to use some variables. I'm just going to use a simple fact that the hypotenuse of any right angle triangle is always the longest side. So, this is the height of this area of parallelogram, right? Now, if you look at this, since the hypotenuse is the longest side, CE, this height of this parallelogram is always less than the hypotenuse, right? Hypotenuse is BC for the right angle triangle, BEC. So, CE is less than BC. I'm going to multiply it by 4 on both sides. 4 times CE is less than 24. Multiply by 4 on both sides. 4 times CE is less than 24. But what is 4 times CE? 4 is the base of the parallelogram ABCD and CE is the height of the parallelogram. This gives you the area of parallelogram. So you get area of parallelogram is less than 24. Very simple, isn't it? I have not used any variable. I have not calculated the height. I have just used the fact that the hypotenuse is the longest side. So you get area of parallelogram here is less than 24. Now, very common question on standard deviation. Again, as I've been telling you, concept clarity is a prerequisite to solve any QC question. Very important. Standard deviation. So, what is standard deviation? Standard deviation denotes how much every data point, every element of a data set is deviated from the mean. That's all is standard deviation, right? So, there are two ways that students solve this problem. Standard deviation of set A. So there is a normal formula to find out the standard deviation. Sigma is equal to the sigma x square by n minus sigma x by n the whole square. This is a formula method, right? Now, again you sit and calculate the mean. You sit and calculate, okay, this is nothing but root of sigma x square by n minus x bar square. Definitely you can do it this way, but then if you keep doing it, the entire time allotted 35 minutes for the 20 questions in section A, you will be allotting only for one QC question. That is not what you should do. Now comparing, you're just going to compare. I'm trying to figure out if I can find out a relationship between this set and this set. Right? Think in a different ways of doing this question. Standard deviation. Now, remember the very basic rules of standard deviation. What are the basic rules of standard deviation? Standard deviation of any set will not alter if you increase or decrease the elements of the set. Increase or decrease a data point by some constant, then the standard deviation will never change. Only the mean changes. When you calculate the mean average, then the corresponding mean the new mean increases or decreases by the same unit as a constant. If every data point is added or subtracted by a constant, then the mean changes by that constant, whereas the standard deviation remains the same. On the other hand, when you multiply every data point by a constant, then the standard deviation gets multiplied by a constant. It's a very important rule that you should know for standard deviation. That way, it is easy to crack problems related to standard deviation. Now, standard deviation of set, as I told you, try to compare, analyze these two sets. Okay, 1, 1. Find any element number closer to 1 here. That's a number 3. So, between 1 and 3, I have 2 1s, 2 3s. That should immediately ring a bell in you. Some kind of pattern is going on here. 1 plus 2 is equal to 3. 1 plus 2 is equal to 3. Next, find a number closer to 4. Closer to 4 is 6, 7 and 8. Take the nearest number. 4 plus 2 is equal to 6. Right? Now go for 5. 5 plus 2 is 7. Now I think you know what I am doing. Right? Now 6. Go for 6. 6 plus 2 is equal to 8. Go for 10. 10 plus 2 is equal to 12. So, bingo, what are you getting? Every element or every data point here has been increased by 2 units from this data set A, which means, as I told you, the standard deviation remains the same. The answer would be option C, where you say that both the quantities are equal. Very simple, isn't it? All I have done here is compared, that is, try to figure out some kind of pattern between the elements of the data set. Are they multiplied by a constant? Are they increased or decreased by the same units? Right? It will be rearranged like this. But you should be smart enough to think in that angle. And remember that rule that standard deviation remains unaltered when you would increase and decrease by the same constant. Okay? I hope this webinar was useful for you. And please stay on the further weeks for more problem solving techniques, more types of problem solving, more types of questions with respect to GRE in this webinar series.
Now, before I move on to the last part of this webinar and we answer your questions, I want to talk about the benefits of online GRE prep, because some of you might be having that question, right? Why should we prepare online? How does it work? Is it really beneficial? So for that, I'm going to show you a quick demo of what galvanized GRE courses look like, so you can see for yourself what you can expect. And we will be right back after this short demo video. Hi everybody, this is Sana and I'm a GRE counselor here at Galvanize. We make it easy to get a high GRE score with a personalized study plan, expert support and high quality study material. Today I'm going to show you what a personalized study plan looks like and how this is designed. Now this right here is your study plan. As you can see, your lessons will be divided on a day-to-day basis. All you need to do is log in and this study plan will tell you what you need to study for that particular day to reach your target score, right? It is flexible, so you can decide that you will do this later, that you don't want to do this, or you can decide to do it on a separate day. Now, the way we design your study plan is with the help of our GRE diagnostic test. Let me show you how that works. So if you click on this link, you'll be taken to a diagnostic test, which will look a little bit like this. So first things first, we take a look at how much time you have to prepare, whether 3 months or 45 days or a year. Second, this diagnostic test tells us what your GRE strengths and weaknesses are. It instantly lets us know what concepts you need to focus on to achieve your target score. For instance, you can see this particular student got exactly 50% of RC reading comprehension right and 50% wrong. That means there's still a lot of room for improvement there. Similarly, for quantitative comparison questions, you can see he got about 86% right, which means that's something that he's already pretty good at. So this visual right here will give you an idea of your strengths and weaknesses. But there's more. Here you can see a detailed analytical response of your performance on this diagnostic test. You can even see, if you scroll down a little further, how much time you spent on each question versus how much time others have. Now, this is all really useful information to have before you start your GRE prep. With this info and the amount of time that you have, a personalized study plan will be designed just for you, taking your strengths and weaknesses into account. Having high quality study material is obviously very important. So you can see here 5 full-length GRE mock tests that are spread out throughout your course. Below that are your lessons. There's a whole section for tips and techniques alone. But here's the really cool part. Suppose you set your target for GRE Quant to be 170. This flag post right here will keep moving as you learn more and more, so you can see how much closer you're getting to your target score. Similarly for verbal, right? You can see how many of the lessons you've taken. You can see how many of the tests you've completed. You can also see how you are progressing and how far away you are from your target score. Not to forget AWA, there is an entire section down here. Now, we believe in working smart, not necessarily hard. And our GRE prep courses will work twice as hard as you to make sure you get the best GRE score that you deserve. But now comes the best news. Exclusive for webinar attendees today, we have a very special offer for your GRE prep. Check out your chat boxes. I will be sending you a link. Use that link to chat with us and claim your offer. And hurry guys, coupons are given on a first come, first served basis. So without any further ado, let me hand over back to our presenter today.
All right, guys, I hope that that was a little helpful. I hope that being able to see what you can actually expect from your course has given you a better idea of why online prep will actually work for you. So, very quickly, let me now run through a couple of the benefits that I think are the most important about online courses. Number one, obviously, it is convenient and customizable. With online GRE courses, you can create your own test schedule and intensity, study in the comfort of your home, and skip classes on days that you don't have the time. Number two, personalized learning. In a classroom, can you ask the teacher in class to skip parts that you are very good at and move on to the sections you need to work on? No. But with online prep, you can tailor your course and choose to learn the things you want and skim over the rest. Next, you can learn at your own speed. With online prep, you can pause whenever you want, you can take notes, you can repeat a topic as many times as you need. In a classroom, however, a teacher will not repeat a concept only for one student. They have their time limitations as well, so the tutor can't afford to spend 10 extra minutes reteaching you. Then online prep is more cost effective. Most coaching centers are quite expensive for GRE training. Private tutoring is even more expensive. But registering, and keep in mind that registering for the GRE on its own is quite expensive, right? So online prep is usually much more affordable. You don't have to spend a lot of money on coaching classes, but you can still learn the same stuff at a much lighter price. The content is the latest. Most coaching centers don't update the material every year. Their lessons, sample papers stay the same for many years. In online prep courses, the quality of the content does not stay stagnant. It runs on an ever evolving software which includes the most recent data and provides you with the latest information. You can practice in a test-like environment, right? The GRE is a computer adaptive test, so it makes sense to practice and study to solve questions and solve practice tests on a computer. You'll get used to reading complex passages on the screen, and you will also get used to taking a 4-hour long test on the computer. This will help you immensely on test day. Finally, you can track your performance. Online GRE prep will give you an instant score after you take a practice test along with an analysis. So this will help you measure your performance and will also allow your mentor to analyze your strengths and weaknesses. Now, I just covered some of the most important reasons for choosing an online prep course, right? So I hope that clarified a couple of questions that you guys had. We're nearly at the end of our webinar, so I will take up some questions now.